you walk into a room in a classroom, okay, and you're sitting as a right eye dominant student on the left-hand side of the room. So now I got to process out of my left eye. Not going to learn as much as if I walked in, got onto the left-hand side of the room and put everything off to my right side so I could see it. I'm going to learn faster, okay? Because of how the information enters your eyes. I want you to think about that for a minute in terms of sports performance. If you were to muscle test it, and I know there's a lot of people who don't like muscle testing, and I got to tell you this.
No, there's one guy, just one guy.
Well, I can tell you this. Muscle testing is a great way to get a global response from your nervous system, okay? And I've done this with people on this Zoom right now. Is if you muscle test somebody sitting straight up and you press down on their arms in your shoulder flexion test, and they're right eye dominant, okay? If you stand on their right-hand side or you make them look to the right, their brain finds a better anchor point. It's insane. If you go around onto their left-hand side and do the same muscle test, they won't have an anchor point like they have. No, they're not going to be weak to where they can't hold you. But there's going to be this stability that lacks in the intrinsic muscles in the spine, in the paraspinals, because there's a huge connection with your eyes and your paraspinals.
And one thing that I've found with RPR, and this is all level 3 stuff, that usually if you get into a gluteal / hamstring issue and it's not turning on or staying on, or you're having a hard time, and same thing with psoas, it's going to be your capitis longus, which is the ability, it's the paraspinal muscle that stops your head from jerking back hard to the right or hard to the left. So if that muscle is off, and you can't stabilize your head, your brain's not going to give any power to the glutes. So you have a ton of power. So that defaults to your hamstrings, and that's what gets dinged when when that happens. And it's almost to the T, where if someone's paraspinal, their capitis, the longest capitis is off, which is again stabilizing your head side to side. Usually you've got a hamstring issue.
Okay, so going into color again, and it's not just color through the eyes, because there is rhodopsin in your skin, right? So your body absorbs colors, okay? And Dr. Gillette does a test called a supercolors test. And what he'll do is he'll quadrant muscle test you and find out what color your body responds to, okay? And then it's getting into a bunch of other applied kinesiology techniques where people will say, okay, so if purple is your color, because you've tested it, okay, anything that I eat that's purple, anything that I wear that's purple, my brain is liking that color, okay? Do not believe a word I say, test it. Test it yourself, okay? You wonder why people feel certain ways when they wear certain colors. It's exactly that. And they've tested it. They've put people in a room, like here, blue decreases blood pressure and heart rate. It's great for recovery stuff, okay? It helps with sleep and relaxation, regeneration. Why wouldn't I add that to some type of my recovery modalities? Why wouldn't I? Everybody talks about different things that they do for recovery. Does people talk about colors and how wearing certain colors is going to help in your ability to recover?
Hey, Dan,
okay. Yep.
Can you comment on eye dominance and threat assessment for people who are routinely in harm's way, i.e. determining eye dominance and moving differently as threat levels rise?
Okay.
How would this apply to athletes in contact or other sports?
Yep. Okay. So again, and this was my concern after I said, let's talk about the eyes and performance. You get bombarded because there's so much here that it would take 4 hours of discussion to talk about this. But one of the things that you just said was threat, right? So again, if you are right eye dominant and your head's turning this way, now the things that are off here are going to be an issue for me. So now I'm developing different movement patterns, and I'm trying to figure out how to go from A to B with a lack of everything that I have, because the brain's going into freeze response. Okay. So everything that we do in sports performance right now, we're not training our eyes. When I'm running fast in track, which way am I looking? Straight ahead. When I put on a football helmet, what am I doing? Covering everything around me. Anything that I do in sport outside of maybe being on the soccer pitch, you want to be able to establish that horizon. Okay, so you have to add it into your recovery, and you have to make sure you're stimulating that part of your nervous system, or else it's not going to truly adapt the way you want it to adapt. So again, I'm going to stay on light, and then hopefully I'll get to all your questions through this whole presentation, because I try to touch on each aspect of it. So here's my son right now, and he is when he was born, and watching him breathe, he is a mouth breather. Right? So what we do, and that impacts learning. Again, go back to the book, Oxygen Advantage. That is one of the fundamental things in terms of sensory stuff. Breathing is, you have to have it. You have to be able to do it correctly. So we do a lot of stuff with light with him for his learning. Okay, if you look at all these pictures, as soon as that light hits his eyes, look what happens to his mouth. See how it drops right open? That's the way the brain is it shows the pattern I'm looking for. So we're constantly reminding him to nose breathe, and he's had some adenoid issues and all that stuff, but it's so intertwined to how your body takes in senses. Okay. So I would encourage you to research Dr. Gillette's Eyelights. We use them when we're working out. We use them for recovery, performance gain, you name it. That's all based off of eye dominance. So when we're talking about three different things that you need: proprioception, visual system, vestibular system. Okay. Joint mobility and how the brain perceives movement. The more mobility you have in each joint of your body, the better map it creates for movement, and your eyes are going to help that. Okay. So you've heard terms, I hope, or if you haven't heard this term, the arthrokinetic reflex. Does everybody know what that is? Or should I talk about it for a minute?
Define it.
Means if you jam a joint, you're going to temporarily shut off power to those muscles. And it's global. Meaning I take my finger and I jam any joint, it's going to have a temporary paralysis on your muscular system. Not to where you have no strength, but from a nervous system standpoint, you won't be able to turn on as fast, right? So then some people will go, I've never heard of that in the medical terminology. I will tell you, go to the medical term. If you Google, I think it's arthrogenetic muscle inhibition. So basically what that is when there's swelling in a joint, let's say it's in your knee, your quadricep muscle will shut off, your hamstring muscle will shut off. Something from a coordination standpoint happens when that joint can't move freely. Okay, so if we take those thought processes into our training, we have to be able to have joint mobility. There it is right there. Arthrogenic muscle inhibition. There's the research. And still research it. Don't take my word for it. Research it. Okay, so we talk about those three systems. You have the proprioceptive system, the visual system, and the vestibular system. All three of those things, all three of those components are what your body is seeking to move. So it needs stimulus from all of that. Okay, they all operate separately, they all operate together. If your visual system is impaired, you can use your vestibular system and your proprioception to get better visual system. It's crazy. So you could have, let's say, man, I don't see so well, but I've been doing a lot of joint mobility and a lot of vestibular work. Is it possible my eyes are getting, I can see better? Yep, that happens. Okay. Same thing with your vestibular system. You want to focus more on that, you close your eyes. All of a sudden, it's all about your vestibular system and your proprioceptive system. So each one is interconnected, but each one has to be able to function by itself. We talk about maps, each one of those groups, okay? And it's not like when someone balances on one of those instability balls and you go, yeah, we're working our proprioceptors. There aren't proprioceptors. Proprioception lives in your brain, and it helps create those maps, okay? So each one of those three things creates a map. All right, so let's get into eye muscles. Do you need to know all those? Nope. But you do need to know we have 6 of them. And if you don't train them, it's just like anything else. What they have is mechanoreceptors. Okay? So if you are not stimulating those mechanoreceptors, you're not stimulating certain areas of your body. Okay? So if I took my arm and I held it in this position for a month, what would happen? You don't have to be smart to realize this. I'm not going to be able to move my arm. If I'm constantly training in the gym and my eyes are in this position all the time, what's going to happen to my body? It's going to seize up. I think there's more of an issue through the eyes when we train inside than anything else. Think about that for a quick minute. All the muscles, there's 6 of those muscles. Are you actually exercising them? So what happens if muscles did not move? We talk about arms, hips, foot not moving. It's going to develop a mechanism where it shuts everything else off, and you're going to have like a joint that does not move. You are in tunnel vision. That's what that is. Okay, the eyes are no different. They get no sets, no reps, no nothing. But the sports that we play, even wearing glasses, can affect your periphery, can affect your muscle recruitment. Okay, so when people do eye exercise, I tell them, take their glasses off. I don't care how well you can see. What I care about is, can your brain start to expand the periphery? Does that make sense? Any one of those things can limit your eyes. So the more muscle imbalances you have, the harder it will be to be an elite athlete. I think that's a pretty simple statement, but I think it's pretty accurate. If you watch the best movers in the world, it's not because they lift the most weights. It's not because they're doing somebody's program. It's because they have less muscle imbalances than everybody else. And they've been able to move compensation free. Okay, my man, he's on here too, okay? This is just an example, okay? And I don't like to post videos because I posted it last night and I get people to argue, and then it shows my true self because I like to argue, but I try not to post videos to argue with people, but there's no denying the fact. So we just did some simple eye exercises for him, and he reported, this is what he reported to me. I have no tendo unit. I can't tell you how fast it moved. I can't tell you how much force I generated, whatever, but I can tell you this, it's never moved that smooth for me. Do I need more than that? I don't need more than that at all. At least I don't. That's something that produced a response.